Heather Reiser is the president of the board of the Nelson County Historical Society, and I'd like to ask her to come up and welcome you and tell you a little bit about the society.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Reiser, president of the Nelson County Historical Society. Welcome to Oakland Museum and this wonderful event that celebrates two of Nelson County's famous sons, Earl Hamner Jr. and Jimmy Fortune. We are thrilled to see so many people here today for this great event. So, the Nelson County Historical Society, who are we? We exist to discover, preserve, and promote the rich history of Nelson County. This includes the vibrant cultural history of the county expressed by our writers like Earl, creator of the Waltons, and by our musicians like Jimmy, former member of the Statler Brothers. The Historical Society boasts over 400 members, numerous volunteers, and some very, very dedicated board members. If you too want to discover, preserve, and promote Nelson County history, I hope you will consider joining the society and or volunteering. We would love to have you. As Woody mentioned, we've got two displays inside. After this event, you'll be able to see them. One highlights Earl Hamner and his writings, including the Waltons, and the other, entitled Rhythms Past and Present, honors Jimmy Fortune and other local prominent musicians. I would like to thank all the society board members who worked and volunteers who worked really, really hard to pull this event together today.
Let me talk a little bit about how this day came together. I'm going to give a bunch of thank yous, but I want to recognize a few people who were in the audience. I think Dr. Nina Jennings is here. Is she? No? Okay. Well, she told us she was coming. She is the chair of the Virginia Commission for the Arts, and we wanted to thank her for the support. I don't know if State Senator Free Deeds is here. Yes, he is in the back. Thank you, Free. He's been a great supporter of Nelson County. Thank you over the years. So I got a call from Jimmy, and he said, I have this friend, a really good friend. I've known him for a long time. He's a retired college professor in Utah. And his retirement hobby, I guess, for lack of a better word, is commissioning bronze statues. I thought he meant life-size statues. He calls them heroic statues. And when you see the statue, you'll know what he's talking about. So Jimmy was asked by Lyndon Cook if he would like to have a statue made of him. And Jimmy's response was, only if you do Earl Hamner too. Earl and Jimmy became quite close, particularly in later years of Earl's life. And you see inside video of Jimmy and Earl together, Jimmy singing songs to him, Earl kind of misting up and really enjoying it. We're showing that in one of the rooms inside, and it'll be playing in a loop along with some other Waltons-related videos. So feel free to stay and watch the whole thing. It's the three together are about 24 minutes long. I want to thank Jimmy and Nina. They have been solid behind this event. We really appreciate your help and support and all the fortunes you brought with you. I would try to name them all, but there's no way. I do want to recognize some relatives of Earl Hamner. Mike Timberlake, where are you? Right over there. He's a cousin of Earl's. Harold Hamner, I'm sorry. Harold Hamner. He is the son of Bill, who was one of Earl's brothers, right?
Right.
Yeah. And Wendy Hankins. Where are you? Wendy is Audrey Hamner's daughter. And if there are any other Hamners here, let us know. Raise your hand or something. Certainly a great big thanks to Lyndon. Where is Lyndon? And Peggy, thank you so much for your graciousness and really setting this whole thing in motion. I was just kind of like the messenger, and the board responded as positively as you could possibly expect. Scott and Caroline Hamner, Earl's son and daughter, couldn't be here. They have other engagements, but they have been with us all the way on this. When we sent them pictures, well, actually we requested pictures, and initially we were going to have a very young Earl being sung to by a very old Jimmy Fortin. So we reversed that. Stan Watts is the sculptor. Where are you, Stan?
Right here.
And Stan is sticking with us for a while, so when we go down to see the sculptures, you can ask him any question you want and be prepared for a lengthy answer. I want to thank Gary Drumheller and Keeney Harris. Are either of you guys here? The concrete pad was my biggest fear, that we wouldn't be able to get it done. And it got done, and it got done very, 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 very reasonably in this day and age of rising building costs. So I thank them and their crew for putting in that concrete pad. It has to be at least 8 inches thick in some places and 4 inches in another. There's a lot of concrete there. It took a lot of work and a lot of supervision to make it come out the way it did. So when you see it, think about Teeny and think about Gary. I want to introduce the chairman of the Nelson County Board of Supervisors, Jesse Rutherford. He is going to do a special proclamation and resolution.
First and foremost, I want to thank you all for having me here today. Thank the Historic Society for their works in this special day. This is a special day. Mr. Hamner, of course, I can't tell you how many stories my great aunts had about him when they were in school together, or maybe it was, you know, all the songs that we listened to Jimmy was playing. Been to a couple dozen of those concerts with my relatives. And when Mr. Greenberg approached us about having a dedication today, I assure you this was a non-question. It was done. And so this unanimously passed resolution for the declaration of July 8th, 2023 as the Earl Hamner Jr. and Jimmy Fortune Day. So I am now going to read that. Whereas Earl Hamner Jr. and Jimmy Fortune have brought great honor to Nelson County nationally, and whereas Mr. Hamner's novel and film, Spencer's Mountain, and his creation of the Emmy Award-winning The Homecoming and the Waltons television series are all set in Nelson County. And whereas national recognition of Mr. Hamner has brought thousands of visitors to the county to see his boyhood home, a museum dedicated to the Waltons, and other business enterprises associated with Mr. Hamner's contributions to American popular culture. And whereas Jimmy Fortune is a country and gospel music singer from Nelson County who sang with the Statler Brothers for 21 years and wrote the song Elizabeth for the group as well as several other #1 country hits. And whereas Mr. Fortune has been inducted with the Statler Brothers into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame and the Country Music Hall of Fame, and was also inducted twice into the Virginia Music Hall of Fame and continues to perform as a solo artist. And whereas both Mr. Hamner and Mr. Fortune continue to bring honor and recognition to the county of their birth and upbringing. And whereas the Historical Society has arranged to honor these two Nelson County citizens with life-size bronze statues at Oakland Museum. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Nelson County Board of Supervisors hereby declare that Saturday, July 8th, 2023, be known as Earl Hamner Jr. and Jimmy Fortune Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for their expression of support. It's very meaningful. You know that July 10th is the anniversary of Earl's birthday, so he would have been 100 years old, right, Cynthia? Yeah. That's one of the reasons we chose this weekend to do this, and we're very thankful to Jimmy for making sure that Earl got the recognition that he's getting. I got to know Earl Hamner many years ago, back in the late 70s, I guess. And the reason I got to know him was because he liked something I had written for the Nelson County Times on his mother, Doris Hamner. Doris and I had become friendly because we show up every year at the Quill and Scroll, the Journalism Honor Society, which was named for Earl. And she and I would sit in what was called the green room, although it wasn't green, and chat. And she told me about all the hundreds of people who were coming down to Skyland to see where John Boy grew up. There was a little bit of confusion about that because obviously John Boy was a stand-in for Earl, but nonetheless, it showed the power of Earl's writing and creativity, that all these people were making pilgrimages to Schuyler, Virginia, to see where the Waltons stemmed from. That's a pretty powerful thing that Earl had created. Earl was supportive of this museum when we started this museum, and he managed to give us a collection of memorabilia you will see inside. And it includes one of the 2 Emmys that Earl won for doing the homecoming and the Waltons. We don't know which one because somewhere in the last 30 years the tag fell off that indicates which year. But 1972 and 1973, Earl won Emmy Awards, and this is one of the 2. To talk a little bit more about Earl Hamner, one of the people who was on the show, wrote for the show, and produced a documentary about Earl called Storyteller, which you will see an excerpt from, not the whole thing, because it's an hour or more long, but you'll see an excerpt from it. Mike McGreevy.
I have to write everything out, what writers do. Thank you, Woody, for that nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me and my wife Debbie to this glorious celebration of the lives of 2 of Nelson County's favorite sons, and 2 men that I personally greatly admire, Earl Hamner and Jimmy Fortune. I was lucky enough to know Earl Hamner all my adult life. He was my father's best friend, my writing mentor, and always just good old Uncle Earl to me. And like everybody who ever met him, I loved the guy. Earl was a talented writer, a charming and kind man, a devoted husband and father, and a world-class storyteller. When I was approached to be a part of the documentary that Woody mentioned on Earl's life, I asked Earl what he wanted the film to be titled. Without hesitation, he said, Storyteller. I asked if we could include his name in the title, Earl Hamner, Storyteller. He laughed and said, oh, yes, excellent idea, Mike. So the audience knows who the hell we're talking about. Earl was a consummate storyteller, and the stories he told were rooted in his family and his early life here in Nelson County. Like all great writers, he wrote about what he knew. This place and the people who lived and died here. He once told me that his mission as a storyteller was very simple. His goal was to write about ordinary people and to reveal how extraordinary they all were. He more than accomplished this mission, obviously, writing 7 novels, 6 motion pictures, hundreds of television shows, including episodes of The Twilight Zone, few people know about that, The Homecoming, the Christmas special, Falcon Crest, and of course 9 seasons of The Waltons. When I was doing research for the documentary, I discovered that there are only 2 TV series that are always on the air somewhere around the world, 24/7. In other words, these 2 shows are playing somewhere right now. They were Bonanza and The Waltons. It just proves that family values are universal and everlasting in their appeal. 50 years since its humble beginning, The Waltons is more popular than ever around the world. Earl's story, his message, his words are still touching the hearts of audiences every day, every hour of every day. I first met Jimmy Fortune when we were shooting the documentary at Earl's family's house in Skyler. Jimmy shared with me that his approach to his music and songwriting were not only influenced by Earl's writing, but it was almost identical to his own style of creation. Like Earl, Jimmy listened to the people around him, what they were saying, and what was important to them, then wrote about these ordinary, everyday people with the intention of showing how extraordinary they actually were. And speaking of extraordinary, nobody sings How Great Thou Art or any Baptist spiritual better than this guy over here. And he ain't too shabby belting out a country tune. Earl, like millions everywhere, so loved and admired Jimmy's amazing talent. Jimmy's voice and music always reminded him of his Virginia roots, Nelson County, and the Blue Ridge Mountains, and home. When we got in the car after filming Jimmy singing in the Schuyler Church for the documentary, Earl sighed, turned to me, and said, "Man, when Jimmy Fortune sings, God listens." So it's appropriate that these 2 humble and good men, Nelson County legends, be memorialized together in a work of art, a statue as fitting tribute to their talent. 2 ordinary guys from Virginia whose voices have been heard all over the world, and their voice comes directly from all of you. When our jet took off after we had completed filming of the documentary in Schuyler, I noticed that tears flooded Earl's eyes as he gazed out at the Virginia countryside below, the countryside he so loved. I asked if he was okay. He nodded and quietly said, "I don't think I'm coming back." Sadly, he was right. But I truly believe that he's returned in spirit and is here with us all today. So in closing, I want to share Earl's own words about what this place, its people, meant to him. This is the ending narration from the Waltons episode, Founders Day, written and recited by Earl Hamner Jr. And please forgive me that I can't do it as well as he did. There is something within us that tells us all we will ever know about ourselves. There is a destiny that tells us where we will be born, where we will live, and where we will die. Some men are drawn to oceans. They cannot breathe unless the air is scented with the salty mist. Others are drawn to land that is flat, and the air is sullen and as leaden as August. My people were drawn to mountains. They came when the country was young, and they settled in the upland country of Virginia that is still misted with a haze of blue which gives those mountains their name. They endured and they prevailed through flood and famine, diphtheria and scarlet fever, through drought and forest fire, whooping cough and loneliness, through Indian wars, a civil war, a world war, and through the Great Depression. They endured and they prevailed. In my time, I have come to know them. I have walked the land in the footsteps of all my fathers, back in a time where the first one trod and stopped, saw sky, felt wind, bent to touch Mother Earth, and called this home. This mountain, this pine and hemlock, oak and poplar, laurel, violet, and rhododendron, home and mountain, father, mother, grow to the sons and daughters to walk the old paths, to look back in pride in honored heritage, to hear its laughter and its song, to grow to stand and be themselves one day remembered. I have walked the land in the footsteps of all my fathers. I saw yesterday, and I look to tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jimmy wants to say something and play something for Earl.
I don't know if I can after that. There have been many God things in my life, and definitely today is one of those. Like I said, I'm pretty emotional, if you don't know that. But I'm going to try to keep it short. But I wrote a song for Earl some years back. I call it Earl's Song, and I kind of pieced it with another song that I've written called Virginia Dreams. And make welcome Billy James, one of my best friends up there. Play bass for him. Anyway, I couldn't help but think about Earl. Our families kind of coincided in some ways, I guess you might say, and we used to joke around about things, and I tell him my family, I had a big family too, there was 9 of us, I'm number 7 of 9, and I said my daddy went broke making fortunes, and he always got the biggest kick out of that, but we got to share a lot for the last few years of his life, and I'll treasure every moment, and whenever Lyndon and Peggy Cook came to me and asked me about this, I just thought about Earl, and I said, you know, I don't need a statue for me, but I said, I know Earl Hamner needs one, and so if you get one for him, I'd be happy. So thank you so much, and thank you, Stan, for doing a wonderful job. Stan, he took my advice and gave me more hair, you'll notice on it. And pretty much made it life-size, and I thank you for that too. Anyway, to Earl and his family, this song's for you all. Come with me and I'll take you away to a place I knew yesterday, where wildflowers grow and peaceful rivers flow, and the blue mountains mingle with the stars. and the memories that make you who you are. Yeah, the mountains of Virginia know my name. Life somehow keeps taking me away, but I go back in my mind, back to those Nelson County times. Virginia dreams, they always take me back. Virginia dreams, there's no other place like that. And no matter where life takes me, or how far away it seems, I keep holding on to my Virginia dream. I've roamed this whole world over, yeah, I've been everywhere. But when you see those Blue Ridge Mountains, no others can compare. Like the tall trees on the mountainside, my roots are buried deep in the rivers and the valley of my Virginia dream. Virginia dream, they always take me back. Virginia dream, there's no other place like that. And no matter where life takes me, how far away it seems, I keep holding on to my Virginia dream. Yeah, I still hold it sacred, this place that I call home, 'cause I love to ride the back roads, smell the fresh hay mowed, from the mountains to the ocean, that great Atlantic shore. They hold everything I dream of, yeah, I couldn't love it more. Virginia dreams, they always take me back. Virginia dreams, there's no other place like that. No matter where life takes me, or how far away it seems, I keep going back in my Virginia dream. I love to feel the wind blow through the tall pines, hear the pretty sound of a whippoorwill. I love to smell the lilac in the springtime. Oh, I still see me running through the field. Virginia dreams, they always take me back. Virginia dreams, there's no other place like that. No matter where life takes me, or how far away it seems, I keep holding on to my Virginia dream. Yeah, no matter where life takes me, or how far away it seems, I keep going back in my Virginia dream. Virginia dreams, Virginia dreams. Thank you all so much. I can't tell you what this means to me. Like I said, there's been many God things in my family, and I guess it wouldn't be complete unless I sang this song. How this name has been so familiar with the Hamner family and the Fortune family. And since we have Elizabeth here today, I told her I'd sing a little bit of that for her. So this is for you, Cameron, okay? Oh, Elizabeth, I long to see your pretty face. I long to touch your lips. I long to feel your warm embrace. Don't know if I can ever live my life without you. I'm sure missing you. I remember when we shared the life together. You gave me strength and love, and life felt brand new. Through some far away, I have to say I'm feeling blue. And oh, Elizabeth, I'm sure missing you. Oh, Elizabeth, I long to see your pretty face. I long to touch your lips. I long to feel your warm embrace. Don't know if I can ever live my life without you. Oh, Elizabeth, I'm sure missing you. I'll tell you, what a sweetheart. You really are. Every time listen to the Waltons, no matter where I'm at on earth, when you hear that song, it just takes you right back to Nelson County. And it sure does make me feel good. It makes me feel good to be here today. Earl said the last letter he wrote me, I treasure so much. And he said he knew his time was getting short. And he said, but my life won't be complete unless I hear Jimmy Fortune sing How Great Thou Art one more time. So I'm going to attempt that for you right now. And, I apologize for my voice today. I'm on all this medication and everything, so my psyche and everything's going every which way right now. So anyway. But it comes from a grateful heart. You can sing along if you want to, okay? Oh Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands hath made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Sing it with me, come on. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how how great thou art. How great thou art. God bless Earl Hamner and his family. We love you all so much. God bless my family too. I love you all. Good night, John boy.
Wow. No words. Cammy Cotler arranged for 5 members of the Walton's cast. Would have been 6, except Richard Thomas got called away by something, to say something about Earl Hamner. So I'm going to play it for you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming together. Anybody with a big family knows it's not particularly easy to get everybody together at the same place at the same time. And we've all overcome our technical challenges to be here and to have a moment to kind of remember Earl Hamner and celebrate his 100th birthday. Let's start with the homecoming, which is the first time we would have all met him and worked with him. Does anyone would anyone like to start with a recollection of Earl Hamner and the homecoming?
Yeah, I have one. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, David. Yeah. Great. Keep going.
Okay. I said this somewhere, but I remember when we were in there with Fielder Cook and stuff, I got the creepy. Earl's the only guy that didn't give off shark vibes. You know, I distinctly remember that, and I'm like, I like this guy, but I don't know about these other people. So that's kind of a nice credit to Earl that he made us feel welcome.
And yes, and Earl was there, and then they sort of explained it was a story about his family, and it was just lovely. He was lovely. Does anybody else remember that?
Well, I do remember towards the end of the filming of The Homecoming, we all went up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and we spent a week up there. And we got to spend time with 2 of the things that were very special to Earl, which were his 2 kids, Carrie and Scott.
And Carrie were there, yeah.
And they were extras used in some of the outdoor scenes on the show, on the movie. But also we got to hang with them. And that was when they became part of our family that we were starting to grow into at that point. Also, I just remember Earl, on to what David was saying, he was such a gentle man. I use that word very closely because, he always used gentleman. He was such a nice man. And he always, I asked him, I said, I felt like you didn't look at me when we were at the auditions. This was after we had started filming. I said, I've never felt that way before. He goes, I just felt you were part of the family. You were one of my brothers already. And, I just thought that was such a nice way to say it. You worked, and I didn't question or challenge the casting directors or anything else. He was that type of a person. It just so sweet and so nice. And
he was
very approachable. Kind.
He was kind of a father figure. He was protecting his child, which was great because he was always so sincere and he was genuinely interested in what was going on. He'd always come down to the set and not just talk about what we were doing, but just, how are you? What have you been up to? And we didn't get that from our other producers.
I had, at some point, I bought a copy of the book of The Homecoming, and I had an opportunity to have Earl sign it, and he was really sweet. He wrote his inscription said something like, to Judy, who had all the best lines and knew what to do with them.
Oh, sweet.
So I loved that. That was really sweet. So he would do those very kind sort of personalizations on things like that. I think he also signed my Goodnight John Boy book, and so
he was very, I mean, responsive. I think when we did the homecoming, I had never acted before, and in the walnut cracking scene, Elizabeth was supposed to burst into tears, and I just didn't know how and couldn't do it. And I think in seeing that challenge, he wrote the little scene for David and me up in the hayloft where we talk about me not wanting to get any bigger, and he just so the problem of me not really knowing what I was doing as an actor kind of led to this really sweet opportunity for David and I to have the scene in the hayloft, because I couldn't cry. I don't think he was looking for amateurs, but I think he was looking for kids who could feel authentic and kid-like as opposed to too polished. When the series started, it always seemed like such a big deal when he came down to the set, because I feel like maybe he was around a lot when we were doing the homecoming. Does that match your recollection?
Mm-hmm.
And then once we started into the the weekly grind of getting the TV series out, you didn't see him on a daily basis.
Well, I think there was a lot more demand on him at that point, because he had to come up with 24 shows every year. And so I think he was writing a lot and rewriting a lot at that point. So you're right. I remember seeing him at least one time every show, each episode, but sometimes a couple times. And it almost got to the point where he was so busy that when he did come down, there was a problem that he had to try to figure out how to make the script work for all of us.
Earl told me at some point during the homecoming or at some point after the audition that he just thought I looked more like his son than his own son. So the fact that I looked like one of his family had a lot to do with me being cast, I'm sure.
So he probably had a
Same thing
vote.
was true for me. He said that I looked like Audrey.
It's true.
The real Aaron. So yeah, and we do look alike.
Yeah, and
so.
John, I remember meeting Cliff, and we you and I were out there in Virginia at the time, and we met him, and I said, "My gosh, you look more like his son than his kids did." Yeah.
But for the record, Eric and I went to Virginia in 1974.
Wow.
So I was 18, you were 15, I think.
Probably, yeah.
And we actually stayed there at the Hamner house, which was with Doris, Earl's mother.
Yes.
Which was
and remember when Doris she told us there was a knock on the door, and she said, "You guys go get it." So we opened the door, and it's some fans that are coming to see her, because she says it was like a pilgrimage of the area. They would all come and visit with Doris. So they, of course, opened the door, and you heard her cackling in the back. She thought she really pulled one on, because, of course, the people opening the door see John and I there, and they're going, "Something's wrong here."
They must have been really surprised.
The casting, I mean, if you think about, we had the opportunity to watch the homecoming with a live audience that, I don't know, 10 years ago in an event in New Jersey. And I've always loved the homecoming, but it's like a home movie for me, right?
Yes.
And I was just astonished at the degree to which the entire audience was like thrilling in all the same places that I thrilled. I mean, Judy's like walking around the circle, and she's going to blow up like a big balloon. I mean, that's a phenomenal monologue, like Earl said, right? You got the best lines, and you made the most of them. And the moment where Mary as Aaron inhales to tattle, like, is the funniest thing. I mean, and I feel like every one of us had these moments with this script that just, it was golden. And I don't know how he did it in terms of writing dialogue that was so easy to say authentically, and also picking the right combination of people.
That was what was magical about him. He had a real sense of humanity, of people, of connection and community. And he never, ever lost that.
Years later, some TV movie or something that was on after our show had been off for some time, and I watched it, something that he'd written, and it was so beautiful. And I remember calling him just to say, "Earl, I watched this," and again, just being so moved by the quality of his writing. It was just so beautiful. And then we were so lucky to have his presence in every single episode. Those narrations, the beginning
Oh,
and
yeah.
end, are just such a gift to the show, that he was the one who did that narration.
No, Earl was he was essential. He told me that, they saw him coming a mile off, and that they, kind of controlled him in the beginning. And as the show continued and got more popular, I think he had more say in the matter. But yeah, he said they saw this country bumpkin coming a mile off and figured, oh, we'll just make money off this guy. And I don't think anybody was prepared for the gravity of the launch. I love that story that Judy tells about how people were clamoring for more family shows, and the guy at CBS says, oh, well, we'll just do this show, and then they'll shut up. And I don't think they expected it to get picked up. Earl's like this little pebble who was thrown in a big pond, and it's still creating ripples. Here we are 5 decades later, and I joke that for me, the Waltons is like a piece of gum you can never entirely scrape off the bottom of your shoe. But that's just me, not passing up an opportunity for sarcasm.
I think that he, like Eric said, he had great respect for where he came from, and how he came up. And so he told stories with that lens of respect, and stories about people who I think very traditionally are made fun of, are reduced to kind of stereotypes or kind of country bumpkin imagery. And he never did that. He always tried to really show the humanity of poor people, people of color, rural folks, really
people struggling,
yeah,
hungry people. Yeah, the Dust Bowl. I remember all of that.
The people you'd never saw on TV before.
Yeah,
people who weren't
it was
so
so
dignity and
real.
respect.
Yeah.
I remember him being the person who came down to the set early in the first season and sort of coached us on our accents. And I remember him giving us tips on, so that we didn't fall into doing hokey Southern accents, that he sort of just kind of told us to soften the words, soften the endings, take the consonants off. And, that was that they didn't, certainly I never felt self-conscious about having to really worry about, was I doing an authentic Virginia accent, because it's a very tough accent to do. And yet, they didn't let us fall into just doing a really broad hokey Southern accent.
And I think it's really just, in celebrating Earl and his birthday, I think it's really just the legacy, like David, you'd said about the ripple effect. He is still touching lives. The legacy that he has left behind for the world has been
a true instrument.
Huge.
Yeah.
Here we're talking about him.
Yes.
And that we're all here still, and we have each other because of what he created. He created us as a family on and off screen.
I have to mention this. I almost forgot it, but before Carolyn Grinnell died, we were talking about Earl should be commemorated on a stamp. So I did some research about it. I found out some things. I thought you had to be deceased to be on a stamp. Well, they've changed that. You can still be alive. But what I found out was the board of directors for the post office meets twice a year. You can submit anybody, but on the website it suggests that people chime in via social media. So when this is shown, we might mention that, because I think he deserves to be on a stamp. It would be so easy to do a campaign where every Walton fan under the sun bombards this board of directors with a request that Earl Hamner Jr. get on a stamp. I think it could happen. Me and Carolyn were trying to make it happen before last year, the 50th anniversary would have been great timing. But
Mm-hmm.
if you guys can keep putting the word out there, I don't know where people on social media would go to submit that, but they requested that's the preferred format as opposed to like a letter writing campaign.
I have a surprise for everybody. David mentioned earlier about Earl pitching other projects. Earl pitched a project to me, and this was about 20 years ago. And he said, I want to make a CD. And it will be called Earl Hamner, A Joyful Noise. And he said, I've written material about all the hymns that we used to sing in church, my family and I. And there's a story to go with each one. And he said, I want you to do music for it.
Wow.
And so, long story short, 20 years later, I mean, there were various delays over the years for one reason and another, but it's going to be out this year.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
It's text and Earl's narration and music and production by myself and Patrick Copeland. We took his recordings from 20 years ago and we scored them. And it's kind of like, and they're sound effects. It's like, kind of like watching a movie with Earl's voice with no picture.
Wow.
So, and his voice, it's the Earl that everybody knows and loves, that wonderful honeyed Virginia voice just fills the room and fills your heart. And there's just a handful of people that have heard it, his family and a couple of friends, and they loved it. And I can't wait to share it with everybody. So it's going to be out this year, and it will be sold on my website. So far, that's the only place that will be offered. So I'll make an announcement on Facebook, and there'll be a pre-sale. So everybody will know. But
that's great.
I'm really excited about it. I think his friends and his fans are going to love it.
Oh, John, it sounds great.
That's amazing.
Another ripple from that small pebble, huh?
Yeah.
It's truly Earl at his best.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was probably about 80 when he did it, and he was just in fine form, and his writing is beautiful. And it's not about the Waltons per se, but it is so Walton-esque because it's about his family and his growing up in Schuyler and his life beyond that, and how he took these hymns with him. And now he doesn't do any singing. There is singing on the album, but it's just him reciting some of the lyrics and telling these beautiful stories.
Wow. Amazing. That's great. I can't wait.
I'd invited Richard to join us, and he was hoping he would be able to, and then he just emailed me today to say that he's of course touring with To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were going to be videoing, so he had to be to the theater early, and he couldn't make our appointment. But he did say that that he loves Earl, and he loves Earl for being responsible for the second family that he has, that we all have. And also he says he appreciates him for launching his career.
Happy birthday, Earl.
Happy birthday, Earl.
Happy 100 years, Earl.
Happy birthday, Uncle Earl.
Happy birthday, Earl. You live in my heart, sir.
Happy birthday, Earl. We all love you, and you've changed our lives.
This is positively daunting. They are a second family to me. I tell people I was the oldest at home and the youngest on the set, and I completely understand being the oldest sibling and being the baby because I had both experiences. I wish Earl were here because he could write me something beautiful to say right now. I wish Will Gear were here because he could find the perfect Shakespearean quote for the moment. I've been so blessed to be surrounded
by magnificently talented people. And the ripples and the impact of Earl Hamner and his creativity and his connection to where he came from, and his deep and abiding respect for human beings, all of them, really has completely altered the trajectory of my life. I would have just been a little girl growing up in the suburbs of California in my little sheltered pod, right? And instead I went to a TV set where I met people from all over the world. And then I ended up coming to Nelson County because of the opening of the museum, and then ended up moving to Charlottesville and did my first teaching as an educator at Nelson County High School. So there are people in the audience who I watched teach to try to figure out how I could be a teacher. And then by working in Nelson as a city girl, 100% city girl, I mean, I got to run around on the set and play with chickens and climb trees, but I was sort of pretend, right? I went home to the suburbs every night. But when I moved here and worked with students at Nelson, I understood where the stories came from. Because my students had those stories, and they didn't always know they had them. In fact, frequently they had no idea they had them. And I was an English and history teacher, so I was begging them to tell me things and to share. And I would say, you know how to do things that not everybody in the world knows how to do. And they'd say, no, Miss Collar, I don't know how to do anything special at all. I'm like, no, you do. Like, I promise you, there are things that you take for granted that you understand that other people, other places don't know. No, Miss Collar, I don't. And then I'd hear them talking about, like, how to slaughter a hog. And I'd say, not everyone knows how to do that. And they'd say, no, Miss Collar, everybody knows. So I think, part of the beauty of Earl's work, and I think Drew also, is how do you take these things that that are everyday things, yeah? These things we take for granted, and see the beauty and the majesty in them. The Shakers had a saying that you could find God in peeling onions. And it's this notion that it's the world of every day, that we don't wake up to what's so magnificent about the other humans in our lives and about the land we're standing on. And I think Earl, over and over and over again in the Waltons, showed this beautiful family with their strengths and their flaws, yeah, with their stubbornness or griping or whatever real families do, and he celebrated that. There was a time, I think it was President Bush, who said, we need more families like the Waltons and fewer families like the Simpsons. But before we move on, Earl's response to that was, there were families like the Simpsons in Nelson County. He said, I didn't choose to write about them. And I want to believe that if the Simpsons had rolled out onto Walton's Mountain, Grandma would have looked at them sideways, and Olivia would have been horrified, but by the end of the hour, they would have been sitting around the table. They would have been treated with the same respect as anyone else who'd ever come to Walton's Mountain. Because by spending time with them and really seeing them, that shared humanity comes out. And because the internet exists, I Googled to try to find a Shakespeare quote that Will would actually have just had in his voluminous knowledge of language, right? And what he said, or what Shakespeare said, was, one touch of nature makes the whole world kin. So I think Earl wrote about the beauty of this place. And there's something really special about the beauty of this place. But I also believe that for other families and other communities in other places, there's that shared beauty also. You just have to know how to find it and see it and appreciate it. So I hope we all leave here today taking all the lessons from the beauty in Earl's work and from the beauty in Jimmy's work and from the gentle connectedness, right, These are two gentlemen who saw people and heard people and hear people and see people. And that's a beautiful gift for us all to embrace and try to practice. So I'm a teacher, so I'm giving instructions. That's what I do. I can help it. Later, I'll probably try to organize you in a straight line or something. Thank you all for coming. It's an endless testimony to how important their work is and how universal it is and how we all have some of it inside of us to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Cammie. I think if Earl were here, he'd say, enough about me. Let's hear about Jimmy. The music exhibit here in Oakland, actually, the origins of it date back to 2011, when Jimmy and another group of musicians did a tribute to Curtis Matthews at the high school. All 600 and some odd seats were sold out, and at least that many people were turned away from that tribute. Probably thanks to that guy right there. We did another concert 2 years later, a gospel concert with Tommy Fortune and Faithful Praise and the Tom Sisters. It also sold out the high school auditorium. Now, we got distracted by the 50th anniversary of Camille. So, the 40th and 50th anniversary of Camille. So, we have now come back to resurrect, in a sense, the Nelson County Music Project, which is meant to celebrate Nelson County musicians. We got a grant for $7,500 from Bama Works. That's the other Dave Matthews. The Dave Matthews Band that has a charitable foundation called Bama Works. We matched that with the proceeds from the concerts we had done in 2013. We had put it in the bank and saved it. So the exhibits inside reflect the savings of that money and the expenditure of that money. The concert tonight is meant to restore our piggy bank. And since it's sold out twice, I think it will. This booklet for sale, both inside and outside of the museum, help us do what our mission now is, which is to continually expand the Nelson County Music Exhibit and to have programs, more and more programs, that bring people like you all together. Inside you will see and hear performances by Jimmy. You'll see and hear interviews, Wall Satterwhite, the Tom Sisters, Joey Davis, Benny Dodd, George Thomas Fortune, and you can help us continue to expand by buying that booklet, making a donation. We have boxes around. It's not like church, we're not going to be. So we have a little bit of a surprise. The lead singer in the Statler Brothers is here and would like to say a few words about his friend, Jimmy Fortune. Don Reed.
Thank you very much. I was planning on coming anyway today. I wouldn't have missed this for anything. But when Mr. Greenberg here called me last week and asked me to say a few words, whenever I'm invited now that I'm retired to speak on anything, I usually say no. But I told him, you know what, I'll do anything for Jimmy Fortune. And that's what I would do. And I would like to do this for him. I'd like to stand up here today and say something really inspirational and really entertaining and maybe even funny. But I'm telling you, I'm touched so much by what is going on here today and what is happening and what you all are doing for my friend here, Jimmy Fortune, that I don't know what to say. I don't know where to begin. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I first laid eyes on Jimmy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. December 81. That's 42 years ago, in case you can. Jimmy and I were just children. And he came across the mountain one day in December, and the four of us stood around, Harold and Phil and Jimmy, myself, stood around an old upright piano, and we sang a song. And the first song we pulled out of the air, what we want to sing, how about Amazing Grace? And that was the first song we ever sang together. And it has been, I want to tell you, the grace has been amazing ever since, because we got together in our harmony then, our lives got together then, and we have been close and special ever since. Amen. Jimmy and I have been through a lot of highs and lows together. We have celebrated with the crowds and with the hits and the awards and the television and record sessions and what have you. But we've also shared the lows. We lost family members together. We lost our parents together. We lost good, close friends together. And those are the things that really make the time special and make the friendship special. I still do, even after all these years of retirement, I still do a lot of interviews. And invariably, in every interview, people will ask me about the condition of country music today and what I think of it. And they always say, who is the best male country music singer out there? And without fail, I say Jimmy Fortune. No question. Yeah. And then they ask me, who's the best female country singer out there? I say Jimmy Fortune. He can do it all. Have you heard those notes he can do? We heard him that first day when we got together around that piano. And I'm telling you, he was the best then. That first night we walked on stage together in January of 1982 in Savannah, Georgia, he was the best then. And all of these years later, he's the best now, and I'll fight any man, woman, or child who says he's not. I can stand up here for the next hour, and believe me, I won't. And I can stand here and tell you what this man means to me personally and professionally, and I can tell you all kinds of stories. Stories about on stage and off stage and in the bus and record sessions and what have you. But I don't have time for all of that. So I'm just going to tell you one story of what he means to me. And this says it to me, and I hope it will to you. My brother Harold passed away 3 years and 3 months ago. And we knew it was coming. We were all preparing for it. And I knew that when it happened, that I was going to be able, that I wanted to be able to call some very close friends and some very close family to let them know so they wouldn't hear about it on the news the next day or read it in the newspaper. But he and I were very close, and I knew I was not up to it emotionally. So I asked my wife, Debbie, and I asked my son, Dee and Langdon, I gave them each a list with the names on it. And I said, when that call comes and it happens, I can't do this, but would you do this for me? Call the people on your list and let them know, because I can't do it. And they did. That call came at 9:30 one night in April of 2020. And they did that for me. And later that evening, that night, just shortly after they got through making those calls, Debbie and I are sitting alone at home. And I said to her, I said, that phone is going to start ringing off the hook any minute. And when it does, I don't want to talk to anybody. except Jimmy. Within 2 minutes, the phone rang. And it was Jimmy. And we talked. And I gotta tell you, I love this man with the beat of every heartbeat in me. And I love so much what you're doing for him here today. And I thank you for what you're doing. He deserves every bit. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Don has a book, The Music of the Statler Brothers, an anthology by Don Reed. And he says in it, Jimmy was and is an absolute trooper and the fastest learner we had ever encountered. He became our brother in music, heart, and spirit, and remains so today. You just heard why. There's going to be another book out, and it's going to be about Jimmy, and it's being written by Jimmy and David Clark, and he is here and is going to say a few words about his buddy.
Jimmy just said, "Don't make me cry," but he's got a little of that coming today, I think. He's made the rest of us cry. It's such an honor to be here, and when Jimmy was singing earlier, I had the best seat in the house, and I got to hear Don Reed singing harmony with him. It was pretty amazing. That record will be out in October. Honestly, I don't know how you follow him. I still have the 8x10 color picture that I sent away to get an autograph to the Statler Brothers when I was a kid living in Michigan. And was a fan then, and even a bigger fan today. And somehow I was a kid and he was an adult. Now we look the same age. I don't know how that works. But when Woody asked me if I would share just a few minutes today, the email invitation had the wording that said something about the unveiling of the larger-than-life bronze statue of Earl Hamner and Jimmy Fortune. And like everyone else in the world, I was deeply impacted by Earl Hamner's legacy and his work, but I never got to meet him. Jimmy Fortune, on the other hand, I know well. And what I wanted to write back to Woody was to say, as long as I've known him, he's already been larger than life. And it's just an honor to be here. When we started this process, he told you I've gotten to work with Jimmy on the life story, and we have found a way to stretch this process out into 6 years now. And if you wonder how a project that should take 6 months takes 6 years, it's because most of the time when you write a biography, there are bookends. It started here and it ended here, and you know where to close the chapter. With Jimmy, it just doesn't work that way. Something just keeps happening and happening and happening, and it's still happening, and we really didn't know where to close the story. But the good news is it'll be out by Christmas this year. The writing's done. We've got some of the pieces yet to fill in, but it's an amazing story. It's a story of a man that I love dearly, and everything you've heard today. Cammie talked about how Earl wrote about where she wanted to be here because she wanted to know where the stories came from. And everything about this project has just been an absolute joy, an absolute dream come true for a kid like me, who's still a fan of Jimmy and still a fan of the music in general. One of the things early on that he talked about, he said, I want you to go anywhere the story takes you. And it gave me unlimited access to all of his friends, which I didn't know he knew everybody in Virginia. And I don't know how other people do interviews, but I approached it maybe a little bit differently. I did all the research that I could do on who I was going to talk to, and then I filed that away, but I went into the interview with each person with only one question. And that question was, how long have you known Jimmy Fortune? And for the next hour or so in some of those interviews, I let their answers determine my next questions, and it led to some fascinating insights and fascinating stories about a man that is larger than life to me. One of those interviews, that question of how long have you known Jimmy Fortune, one of the most fascinating conversations was with a man named Jerry Kennedy. If you know Jerry Kennedy, if you know his work as producer of the Statler Brothers, but everybody that I know that knows him or knew him would say that he's one of the most kind, one of the most insightful people ever. So I'm on the phone with Jerry Kennedy and I say, how long have you known Jimmy Fortune? And his answer was the whole book in a nutshell. He said, you know, you never really had to get to know Jimmy Fortune. It's like you always knew him. And that's the kind of guy he is. He just, everybody feels like he's their next door neighbor. Everybody feels like they've known Jimmy Fortune forever. I thought the story would be all about the Statlers, and that was an amazing part of his journey. But he couldn't tell any of the story without taking me back to Nelson County. So like Cammie, I came here, I wanted to see the story. I wanted to go by Oak Hill Baptist Church. This journey is so fitting that we're here today. This journey that began with a solo on the platform of Rockfish Elementary School, where, if I remember right, he sang in the school talent contest, and he sang the Battle of Green Beret. Wouldn't you love to have that? But his story is here. You're his people. His mom and dad, his grandparents, everybody that grew up in Nelson County. I think the story is his mom and dad moved 23 times in 26 years. Is that right? All within a few miles of here. Knowing Jimmy the way I do, I think, well, I won't go there. I'm just glad he didn't grow up as a drummer. They would have moved 50 times. But his story is here. It never left here. He experienced firsthand the devastation of Camille. Like so many of you that lived to tell about it, but was deeply impacted by it. And it's so exciting to be here today, to think that the statue will be here forever. It's a pretty amazing thing. I've been blessed to know Jimmy Fortune, and I know his story only because I set out to find it. You people know his story because you're a part of it. You lived it. Today is a pretty exciting day. One of the things about the people of Nelson County that I found out in a hurry we celebrate today is that love has been unconditional. Not everybody can sell out their hometown high school twice. But never in one place along his journey was there a time when he didn't know he could come back home. And that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. This next person has known Jimmy since forever, right? Eddie Witt.
I've made a lot of talks in a lot of different places and taught school and coached for a long, long time. And it just seems, and it works out this way, I seem to be the guy that comes up after all of these great people that got out. And then what am I going to do to follow that? And you know what I found out? You can't. So you'll have to just be yourself and go on with it. But first, before I get started on Jimmy, I do want to say this, that I never did get to meet Earl Hamner, but I feel a closeness because my second grade teacher was named Ann Hamner. I don't know what the relation might be, but anyway, okay, it is relation, right? Okay, good. The second thing, when I went away and came back and started teaching school here, I was an assistant to Jim Moyer and had to go around to all the elementary schools. And in Schuyler, there was a Miss Hamner that taught second grade there. And the athletic field was right across the road from the store, and right down the road was a Hamner home place. And it so turns out that when I was coaching track in high school, one of my athletes, Mike Timberlake, raise your hand. The reason why I say that, Mike is Earl Hamner's nephew, first cousin, okay. And he would tell me a lot of times who was coming to see him and all that stuff, you know, and he was really excited. I'm going to say something about Mike and track. He holds a record that will never be broken. It's all right if I tell that, isn't it? Okay, Mike holds the state record in the intermediate hurdles of 330 yards. Right? Now here comes the point. The reason why he still holds the record, it has changed to the 300-meter hurdles. But he still holds the record. Okay. Now, I'm going to come back to Jimmy in a minute, but I do want to say something about Nelson County. How many people are actually, not just residents, but homegrown Nelsonians? Oh my gosh, that's great. So you know what it feels like. I will say this, I've been away a lot of times, I've come back a lot of times, and when you cross after a mountain, and you get over in this valley, not only is it fresh air and everything, but I don't hear music, but I feel it. Because music is in these mountains, and it's been here as long as time has been. So I'm going to say that as I move on. And I'll move to Jimmy next because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, my first meeting with Jimmy was actually through his brother Wayne. Wayne's sitting right here. Okay, and I don't remember what year it was now. I can't remember back that far. But anyway, when I went into the 6th grade, I had been going to Rockfish Valley Elementary School for 5 years. And that was the year they opened the high school. So the bus routes changed. I couldn't any longer go to Rockfish Valley. I had to go to Livingston. So I don't know whether you remember this or not, Wayne. We went in the classroom. I met this guy right here. We started talking, and we got along just great. I mean, fantastic, you know. So I go home, he goes home, and we tell our parents, you know, I met this great guy. I think we're going to become friends. What's their name? But when they told me, when I said Wayne Forsyth, you're kin to him. He goes home and said his parents said the same thing to him. We come back informing each other the next day. We both knew. And we weren't there in school very long. I don't know exactly what the month would have been, but Wayne's mother came to visit for some reason. And Wayne told me, said, she's carrying my new baby brother. You know, and I said, what's his name? And she said, Jimmy. Okay, so that was the first time that I remember Jimmy. Okay. Wayne and I used to sing Everly Brothers songs all the time. I mean, you know, if a new one came out, first thing we had to do is we had to learn it. Okay, and so Phyllis, Wayne's wife now, she used to have a lot of parties, and you know, there's a lot of dancing that's going on in Nelson County, right? Parties and dances and everything. And we were there one night, and Wayne and I were singing, I'll never forget this, we were singing Ebony Eyes. And Jimmy walks up, and he's, I think, 5 years old, I believe, yeah. And he says, I want to sing. You know what you said, Wayne? I don't have that. I'll tell you, I remember. You said, go away from here, boy, you can't sing. Well, he did. See, leaned back just like this, and he sang every word, not only on pitch, but the exact words. And we're going, holy cow, this boy can sing. At 5. So right then, I didn't know how or what, or by any means of what was going to happen, but I knew that there was a future for this guy somehow, because it showed that night. And what I'd like to do now is to thank the Statler brothers, because you guys, you allowed the world to hear Jimmy Fortune. You already said I remember seeing the Statler brothers at a church right by where I live, 8 Alabama Baptist Church. Y'all sang you had another name at that point. You weren't the Stattlers, right? I know that story too. Okay. We were running from the wall. Where you were? That's good. But anyway, I heard them that night, and boy, was I surprised because it wasn't many years later. I attended a concert in Stanton, and it was Johnny Cash and the Carter family, June and all those, and the Statler brothers. And that's the first time I heard Flowers on the Wall. It was the first performance I think that you'd done live was there. So that was a connection for me years before Jimmy came with you. But thank you again. And I will say this, I was with Jimmy one time when you were filming the show, the Statler Brothers show in Nashville, and I remember what Earl said, and this ties into Nelson County just beautifully. He came up to me and he said, "You're living in Nashville now." "Yes, I am." And what he said was, "Don't you miss those mountains?" Yes. That you never get them out of your system. They're here, and it's good to come back here. There's something special here. Must be something in the water and the air and whatever it is, because there's a lot of music here and there's a lot of fun. Now, let's see what the next step is. I made a list here. I don't make out speeches because I can't. I used to ball them up, throw them in the trash can, so what's the point? I have to make notes so that I don't get off track, because I'm already off track. Okay. So I'm going to try to catch up here. And Woody said he wanted me to talk about Jimmy's place in music today, and I'm going to tell you, I can't say it. You already know it. I know it. The best thing I can do is to tell you some things that happened to Jimmy that tells me that the whole world knows it. I used to do, I guess a lot of you might know, you might not know, I was hit by a tornado in 2011 in Alabama and moved back to Nashville. And there are some things that happened with that, and so when I came back, I spent about a year trying to figure out what I was going to do. Well, you know, I said, I heard Glenn Campbell, you know, he was one of his final concerts. And one of the ushers there was, I said, I know that guy. He's an usher. I'm going to find out how he got that job. Well, I tried to apply for a job as an usher, and they told me that backstage tour guides, there's opening. So I applied and I got it. Okay. So for almost 10 years, I was giving backstage tours at the Grand Ole Opry. And one of the things that would happen now and then, I would come in with Jimmy and could be around his dressing room, be with him or whatever. And the things that I saw just really, really shook me. I'll name a few names. Jimmy would do his performance out there on the stage in that famous circle, and then it would be people coming in to his dressing room, hugging him, congratulating him. I wrote down a few. People like Exile, Jeannie Seeley. I don't even need to go on. It was like half of the people that he performed. You don't see that. That's special. You really don't see that happening, but it happened to him all night long. And it really made me feel good to see that kind of thing going on. Now, we move on to certain other things here, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about the tornado that I went through, because it was devastating for me. I lost everything except my guitars and music stuff. And I was standing out there in an area with nothing left. Absolutely nothing. I didn't even know which direction I was facing because everything was demolished. It was an F5, by the way. And I was trying to find my phone, and I said, well, I don't know where that phone is. It was in another room, but I just started looking. And fortunately, I reached down and just turned over a piece of wood, and there it was. Well, it wasn't very long before the phone rang. And guess who it was? It was Jimmy Fortune. And I'm going, Jimmy couldn't possibly have known about this. There's no way he can know about it. And he said, are you okay? I said, I am, but everything's gone. He said, what do you mean everything's gone? I said, well, I just got hit by a tornado and there's nothing left here. And he said, well, I'm coming down. And I think Jimmy had a tour for out west somewhere now. And I told him, no. We've got a tour that you've got to be on right now, so you need to go. Because you'll never get in here. It's impossible at this point. So we said goodbye and whatever, and then, of course, David Matthews and his wife came down to help me carry that stuff. It was quite an occasion. We go back to a couple months later. I moved back to Nashville, and one night he called me and said, would you like to go to a jam down close to Franklin, I think it was. We went, and Jimmy said, oh, well, when we get back, I skipped something. When Jimmy called me, he told me this. He said, look, he said, I was coming home, getting ready to go in the house, and he says, I got close to the door, and all of a sudden my legs wouldn't move. And he said, I'm going to tell you, I don't think I heard a voice, but there was a voice that said, call Eddie now. Okay, so that's why I'm calling you. Okay, we'll stop right there and then I'll go back and catch up because that frame of time, nothing was striking me, exactly, just looking through all this room and everything. We're riding down to the gym and Jimmy said, you were saved for a purpose. I said, I have to believe that, but it scares me to death. And what Jimmy said, and this is the last thing that I'm going to tell you about Jimmy because it's so important, it means the world to me. I said, I'm scared to death. He says, why? I said, how am I going to know what to do when it's needed, what to say when it's needed, or how to act to anything? And he said, that's simple. I'm glad you think so. I don't. I hadn't figured it. He said, first of all, the Lord will never give you anything that you can't do. And I told Jimmy, I said, yes, I believe that. And then he said this. He said, and if you'll do every day the best you can in what you know is right, you'll turn around and realize you've already done it. That takes a while to sink in. It really didn't sink in totally because that night I thought Jimmy had the right words at the right time. A few years later I realized Jimmy had the right words for me forever. A few years later I got really smart. I said Jimmy had the right words for everybody in the universe. If you'll do that, it'll be a wonderful world. So what I want to do is to thank Jimmy, thank all of you guys, thank the settlers, thank you Nelson County because as you said, Jimmy Fortune and Earl Hamner, they are Nelson County. Thank you very much.
Josh Groban, know the name? He said, no matter who we are, no matter what our circumstances, our feelings and emotions are universal. And music has always been a great way to make people aware of that connection. It can help you open up a part of yourself and express feelings you didn't know you were feeling. It's risky to let that happen. But it's a risk you have to take, because only then will you find you are not alone. And Albert Einstein said, not exactly in reply, the only escape from the miseries of life are music and cats. Roz Harding is Lyndon Cook's granddaughter. She is going to sing. We have not rehearsed this, so let's hope I can coordinate the musical background with her singing. Come on up, Rob.
Perfect. Well, I'm just so honored to be able to sing this for you. Jamie, you've bettered my life in ways that only God knows, and I just thank you for that. Thank you so much. I thank the Lord above for the boy from Nelson County, the goodness of his soul, his love I feel around me, within soul. He hardly had a shot. God gave him a voice, and his mama prayed aloud. I see your heart, Jimmy Fortune. It's your love, in your song. Bring souls unto Jesus, right where they belong. It's no secret, Jimmy, you are anointed to lift the eyes of a weary world, inspire the human soul. Teach the Holy Spirit, God's unredeeming love. They give you courage to pursue this wondrous goal. I see your heart, Jimmy Fortune. It's your love, and your song. Bringing souls unto Jesus, right where they belong.
Yeah. Much respect.
So here's what's going to happen next, all right? And you guys got to cooperate. Jimmy and Cammie and Lyndon and Nina and Mike McGreevy need to go down by the statues. Mike and Cammie are going to unveil Earl, and Nina and Lyndon and Sophie, if she wants to, can unveil Jimmy.
Jimmy and Cammie come in the center here.